Today in the episode, UK and France signed declaration of intent to deploy troops in Ukraine. US and coalition of the willing are ready to monitor ceasefire. Ukraine is significantly ramping up its defense production, 1,500 anti-Shahed drones every single day. Ukraine has hit 21 objects deep in the enemy's territory for just the last 5 days. This night, there were fireworks in Belgorod region, the main result of the meeting of Coalition of the Willing in Paris. UK and France signed declaration of intent to deploy troops in Ukraine if peace deal is reached. The multinational force for Ukraine would operate as a security force, underpinning security guarantees while supporting the rebuilding of Ukraine's own forces. In addition, it was agreed that the strength of the armed forces of Ukraine after the war will be up to 800,000 servicemen. US and Coalition of the Willing are also ready to monitor ceasefire in Ukraine.
And so today there are the various layers of security guarantees in which the United States of America has clarified its participation, and in particular in what we call monitoring, meaning the surveillance of the front line. The American capabilities for observation and monitoring are absolutely crucial and have been confirmed. And so all this to tell you that these past months, we elaborated a whole plan. It is coherent and solid. The United States of America asked us to do more. We are doing it. It is legitimate, and we want to do so.
U.S. position has changed in past few weeks, Emmanuel Macron told reporters in Paris. He stressed the importance of the U.S. in delivering security for Ukraine. French leader emphasized the United States are the only ones who have the ability to provide certain guarantees. All of that is of key importance. Germany is ready to take responsibility for the security of Ukraine and a whole European continent after the ceasefire. Furthermore, Chancellor Friedrich Merz agrees for first time to help monitor ceasefire in Ukraine. But he emphasized that Berlin has not committed to sending troops to Ukraine, unlike the United Kingdom and France.
We agree with our partners in Washington that certain conditions must be met for this to happen. First, we need strong, legally binding security guarantees from all of us, including the United States, and a strong American backstop to secure Europe's commitment. I am very grateful that the United States has been prepared to do this for some time now.
Striking a more friendly tone than Donald Trump, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said in Paris, U.S. is ready to do anything necessary to achieve peace. He confirmed that delegations largely finished with security protocols, and added they are close to what he describes as a prosperity agreement for Kyiv.
And we think we've made a lot of progress. We heard President Zelenskyy and some of the other people here talking about land options. That will be the most critical issue, and we're going to be continuing on with those discussions, and hopefully we'll be able to meet or come up with certain compromises with regard to that. But I do want to say this. We are here to mediate and help in the peace process, and we're prepared to do anything necessary to get to that place.
Ukraine continues diplomatic contacts on a possible peace process, including recent meetings in Paris. But President Volodymyr Zelenskyy remains cautious about the results. His tone is restrained and far from overly optimistic. Ukrainian officials say Kyiv does not expect quick or guaranteed outcomes from these talks and is preparing for a prolonged confrontation. Zelenskyy has made clear that Ukraine's real security guarantees do not come from meetings or statements, but from strength on the battlefield. For Kyiv, continued resistance at the front remains the most reliable way to protect the country, regardless of diplomatic efforts. Ukraine's defense industry continues to improve and expand its capabilities in the face of Russia's ongoing war. According to Ukrainian Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal, the country is now producing more than 1,500 anti-Shahed interceptor drones every day to strengthen its air defense against Russian unmanned aerial attacks. Ukrainian forces are also delivering nearly 1,000 interceptor drones daily to combat threats at the front and in rear areas. helping save more expensive air defense missiles for other uses. This rapid production increase reflects a broader effort by Ukraine to innovate and scale up its own military technology in response to Russian tactics, turning domestic industry into a key factor in protecting troops, civilians, and critical infrastructure. Ukrainian forces have again demonstrated the effectiveness of their unmanned systems on the battlefield. In the Donetsk region, Ukrainian drone operators used their drones to stop a Russian assault carried out on quad bikes along a road toward Yampil. Despite heavy snow, strong winds, and poor visibility, Russian troops attempted the attack, believing the conditions would limit Ukrainian surveillance. Instead, Ukrainian drone crews detected the movement in time, coordinated their actions, and destroyed the attacking group and its equipment. The incident shows how Ukraine's growing use of drones continues to counter Russian tactics and provide a battlefield advantage. The unmanned systems forces of Ukraine has hit 21 objects deep in the enemy's territory for the last 5 days. This night is not exception. The General Staff of the Armed Forces reports successful hits on Oskol Neftasnab, oil depot in Belgorod region. According to military officials, the facility is a key fuel supplier for the Russian occupying army. Significant fires were reported at the site following the impact on fuel reservoirs. Simultaneously, Ukrainian forces struck a logistics warehouse belonging to Russia's 20th Motorized Rifle Division in the occupied part of Donetsk. The strike aimed to disrupt the Russian military's supply lines on the front. Russia has lost more than 1,000 soldiers killed and wounded over the past day, bringing its total number of personnel losses to more than 1.2 million. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine confirmed plus 26 destroyed artillery systems, 122 vehicles, and fuel tankers. Over the past day, Ukrainian army turned into scrap metal 3 tanks and 2 armored combat vehicles. Putin's problems are not limited to the front, but extend far beyond the geopolitical level. The U.S. special operation in Venezuela is another confirmation that Russia is losing allies and its weight in the world. How it will affect geopolitical situation and the war in Ukraine in the next story for you.
On the 5th of January, Nicolas Maduro and his wife were brought to a federal court in Manhattan, 2 days after they were captured in the capital of Venezuela, Caracas. Maduro is accused of narco-terrorism and cooperation with criminal groups for cocaine trafficking to the USA, as well as possession and use of weapons in connection with drug trafficking. The events in Venezuela became a heavy blow for the Kremlin, experts believe.
Russia has something to lose because, first, Russian oil companies are actively working in the Venezuelan oil industry. They have a share there. And if the United States is going to establish control and displace opponents, Russia could potentially lose access to the Venezuelan oil industry. Second, this is a risk of pause in supplies from Venezuela to other regions that directly affect Russia. Clayton Sagel, Senior Fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies.
The U.S. operation in Venezuela was sharply condemned in Belarus, Cuba, China, and of course in Russia. Maduro is a longtime ally of Putin, and the Kremlin invested considerable money in the country. In addition, Moscow and Caracas together engage in maritime oil trade bypassing sanctions. Venezuela belongs to the number of priority allies of Russia, such as Iran, China, and North Korea, analysts explain.
Russia was presented with a fait accompli, and this is an unpleasant story for it. Once again, after Syria and after the summer Israeli strike on Iran, the Kremlin's inability to help its allies was demonstrated. Konstantin Eggert, Deutsche Welle columnist, in a comment to Radio Free Europe. For sure, this is an important region for Moscow, a foothold for Russia in the region, a long time and ancient ally, without which it would be very difficult and will be very difficult in Latin America.
Moscow is demoralized by the demonstration of U.S. power, writes Le Monde.
The removal of Maduro is undoubtedly a blow to Putin. It shows that Russian air defense systems installed around Caracas and recently signed strategic partnership agreements between the RF and Venezuela are useless against American power. Peter Ruff, director of the Center on Europe and Eurasia at Hudson Institute, in an interview with Le Monde.
Maduro did not have time and possibly did not plan to flee to Russia, experts assume. Although Moscow has repeatedly provided asylum to overthrown leaders of authoritarian regimes, this happened with the Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. International organizations have repeatedly accused Assad and his associates of human rights violations and war crimes, including mass executions, use of chemical weapons, and bombing of civilian objects. In December 2024, Assad was overthrown. He, together with his family, fled from Damascus to Moscow. The new Syrian authorities demanded Russia extradite the dictator. Putin refused.
It is hard for us to believe that in just 1 year we got rid of a tyrant who ruled for almost 6 decades, almost 60 years. This was our big dream, and praise God, he blessed us with this gift.
To leave Tehran and flee to Russia if security forces stop obeying orders and switch to the side of protesters is planned by Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei, writes The Times citing British intelligence. Mass protests in Iran began on the 28th of December. That day, shop owners in Tehran closed trading points in protest against the worsening economic situation. Later, residents of other major cities joined the actions. And on the 30th of December, reports appeared about the first clashes between protesters and police, and that security forces used tear gas. The Norway-based organization Iran Human Rights on the 4th of January reported 17 dead. According to its data, at least 500 people were arrested.
This is just the beginning, and we need to see what will happen next with other important territories and the same Iran. I remind you that protests there have been going on for the 9th day, and apparently Khamenei is thinking about leaving Tehran and flying to Moscow. At least the Times reports this.
Russia has been offering asylum to fugitive tyrants for decades. According to analysts, there are at least 2 reasons for this. On one hand, Moscow demonstrates systemic support for authoritarianism and corruption, and on the other, uses retired dictators for manipulations. Even when these figures become useless, Russia continues to maintain them so that those remaining in power believe, if necessary, Moscow will save them. The truth is, after the arrest of Maduro, little remains of such confidence. Reported by Natalia Husak, Volodymyr Shtenhalov, UATV News.
That's all for today's News Digest. Stay informed, stay critical. Like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.